The political right has developed an obsession with transgender people. The existence of transgender people has been turned into their favourite political issue. This is because conservatives have nothing of substance to offer, so they seek to distract by fear-mongering and win support by inciting moral panic. If you can't inspire hope, incite fear. That is an age-old political strategy. It is a strategy that the political right is particularly familiar with. They claim that socialism killed 1 billion people. They claim that feminism exists to wage war on men. They claim that immigration will destroy Western civilization. They claim that LGBT people are evil child groomers. The examples go on and on. Today I want to talk about the political right and transgender people. I have not spoken about trans people very much in the past, primarily because I think other left-wing commentators cover this issue very well. Other left-wing commentators spend a lot of time talking about this and do a really good job a lot of the time. I often try to focus on topics that I think are somewhat neglected. But I think this is a pressing issue, and I think it is about time that I share some of my thoughts on it. Particularly because anti-trans sentiments seem to be reaching increasingly high levels. I think a lot of right-wing coverage of this issue is completely disgusting, both morally and intellectually. Right-wing consideration is plagued by an eagerness for cruelty and an unwillingness to consider the issue in any depth, probably out of fear of what such consideration might discover. The extent of the intellectual contributions made by most right-wingers who comment on this issue is a smug assertion of a definition, the occasional bad joke, and a lot of poor reasoning. I am going to get the big question out of the way right now, although I may come back to it later. What is a woman? Woman is a somewhat vague and incoherent dominant feminine social archetype. A woman is someone who identifies with that archetype. This is the best definition. Some people may want to know how I would define feminine. Feminine describes social standards regarding behaviour and presentation that are traditionally assigned to and associated with the female sex. My definition is of course in conflict with the conservative definition, which defines a woman as an adult human female, with the emphasis being on biology. My definition is better for two very simple reasons. My definition adds massive nuance to our worldview by acknowledging the social reality, as opposed to just reiterating the biological reality that is already captured in the term female. We already have a term for the biological side of things, that term being female. Rather than wasting the term woman on a pointless synonym, we should use it to improve our understandings by identifying and describing the social element. There is a social element, and a very strong one. In our everyday lives, we don't identify if someone is a woman through the inspection of genitals and chromosomes. We look for social markers, such as presentation and behaviour. Things which are not biological. A massive number of the characteristics associated with men and women have nothing to do with biology. A massive number of the characteristics associated with men and women are social and cultural. I think we need a term that improves our understandings by describing this social reality. Woman seems like the perfect term for the job. It is already heavily associated with these things. We already have a word for the biological side of things, that being the word female. So why waste the word woman on creating a synonym when we could massively improve our understandings? Definitions are not some magical, metaphysical, objective, unchanging fact. They are things which we create to serve us. to serve our understandings and our well-being. My definition better serves our understandings by adding nuance to our perceptions and describing the incredibly significant social factor rather than inventing an unnecessary synonym. We can and should alter definitions to improve our understandings. Definitions exist to serve our understandings, and definitions that do that better are better definitions. On these grounds, my definition is superior to the conservative definition. We can and should embrace it. My definition also serves human well-being. My definition is transgender inclusive. It is a fact that having a trans-inclusive definition that recognizes trans people as the gender they identify with is good for their well-being. Definitions that encourage acceptance are desirable because acceptance massively improves the well-being of transgender people. Definitions exist to serve us. Definitions exist to serve human well-being. We can and should adjust them accordingly. This adjustment hurts nobody and massively improves the well-being of trans people. On those grounds, it is completely justified. I often say my definition. Do note that there are very similar and equally valuable definitions that have been created by many other people. When I say my definition, I am talking about my personal definition as defined earlier. I am by no means the maker of the sex-gender distinction, nor the style of definition. I am the maker of this very specific definition. Anyway, to return to my point. We already have the word sex and the terms male and female to cover the biological. We can add massive nuance to our understandings by using the word gender and terms man and woman to properly grasp the social element. This enhances our understandings and improves human well-being. It is far better than merely using these words as synonyms. We can and should use the social definitions because they enhance our understandings and improve human well-being. That is what definitions exist to do, and my definition does this better, which makes it superior as a definition. And as to the idea that this improves human well-being, this is a fact. My definition improves human well-being by allowing for people to be recognized with a gender different to the one they were assigned at birth. It is a fact that such recognition improves the well-being of trans people massively. And it isn't just good for trans people. It is good for people generally. It is a massive mistake to portray such things as only beneficial to the marginalized group. These things are desirable broadly. I invoke my maxims of rational morality. The promotion of respect for sentience is in the interest of one who can suffer. The propagation of empathy and compassion is in the interest of one who can suffer. The ushering in of a humane society is in the interest of one who can suffer. Some people may get sick of me mentioning these maxims. I think it is important that people understand my reasoning. I like to support my moral claims with actual reasoning because I think it is important that we do not become dogmatists and intuitionists who like any substantive difference from our opponents. These maxims align with my conception of gender. By embracing this definition, we are doing something from which we all benefit. The promotion of respect for sentience, propagation of empathy and compassion, and ushering in of a humane society is something from which all who can suffer benefit. It is a fact that a social conception of gender like the one I offer improves human well-being. It massively improves trans acceptance, and trans acceptance improves trans well-being. The encouragement of concern for the well-being of others is in the interest of one who can suffer. We should act in a manner that reflects these maxims. We should embrace a social conception of gender like the one that I offer. The essence of the trans debate is one question. Do we serve concepts, or do they serve us? Do we serve definitions, or do they serve us? Should we alter definitions in order to improve our understandings and well-being? Or should we sacrifice our understandings and well-being in order to preserve old definitions? The answer is obvious. Definitions exist to serve us. We created them. We are their masters, not their slaves. If definitions exist to serve our understandings and well-being, then they can be and should be altered accordingly. Conservatives have a different view. They think we should sacrifice our understandings and well-being on the altar of some quasi-divine metaphysical monstrosity of a definition. Conservatives don't simply think definitions describe the objective. Conservatives think definitions are objective. They regard them as metaphysical forces which exist beyond us and cannot be altered by us. They are delusional. We create definitions to improve our understandings and enhance our well-being. We can and should alter them accordingly. This perspective is the only rational perspective. This perspective serves our interests. The conservative perspective demands that we prioritize loyalty to old definitions over enhancing our understandings and improving our well-being. The conservative conception of gender is a joke, and not just because it is inferior to my conception. The mere existence of intersex people completely disproves their idiotic and reductive conception of a biological binary. This is to be expected because although they claim to care about science on this one issue, they actually know nothing about it. This is to be expected considering the fact that they ignore, if not outright reject science, on basically every other issue. This is also a philosophical matter first and foremost, less so a scientific one. Sometimes the conservatives will accuse us of ignoring the biological. We don't. We have the concept of sex and the terms male and female for that. We simply want to use the concept of gender and the terms man and woman to add the much-needed social dimension to our understandings. We don't ignore the biological, but the conservatives do ignore the social. They would prefer that the social terms simply be used as unnecessary synonyms for the biological ones. The conservatives offer no concept for understanding the social because they want to pretend that the social is biological as a means of portraying traditionalist gender expectations as a part of reality itself. Conservatives want gender to be biological because they want us to forget the social element of such things. This is an attempt at making gender roles obligatory and unquestionable. Claiming that these roles are something we should adhere to isn't good enough for the conservatives. They have to claim that these roles are simply something that we are. This is of course tyrannical in every sense of the word. The conservatives wish to deceive people into thinking traditionalist gender expectations are essential to their being by conflating the social with the biological. Conflating the biological with the social role is an act of tyranny which seeks to transform social standards and expectations into an integral part of one's being. I am saddened by the degree to which the potential for reasonable discussion about these matters has been poisoned by disingenuous, hateful creatures. This is a very nuanced matter, and the fools who pretend that it is a very simple one are practicing a profound degree of anti-intellectualism and complete stupidity. Many people regard this discourse as simply a place to get a few cheap owns. They have no interest in actually learning anything. They just want to make people look crazy and evil, and their involvement begins and ends there. As I said earlier, when you can't inspire hope, incite hatred and fear. The political right is neck-deep in this strategy, and innocent people will pay a very heavy price for it. The Conservatives smugly say that trans people are not included in their definition of woman. They have repeatedly made it obvious that this smug statement is the extent of their willingness to engage with this subject. They think quoting their inferior definition somehow disproves us, as if our argument is not simply that their definition should be replaced by our superior definition. Our definition that better enhances our understandings by identifying and describing the social aspect. Our definition that better improves human well-being by paving the way for the acceptance of trans people and by extension their happiness. These definitions are the right ones because they are the desirable ones. They enhance our understandings and improve human well-being. The Conservatives think we should put devotion to some unchanging, quasi-divine metaphysical conceptions before human well-being. The leftists and liberals think that concepts exist to serve us, and can be and should be altered accordingly. In my observations, that is the core difference. I see leftists and liberals arguing that we should alter definitions to enhance our understandings and improve our well-being. I see conservatives treating definitions like magical unchangeable forces that we must preserve in their traditional forms, regardless of how much such mindless preservation weakens our understandings and threatens our well-being. In truth, definitions exist to serve us. If they do not serve us, they have no value. We create definitions that serve us by enhancing our understandings and improving our well-being. This is what definitions exist to do. Our definitions do it better. On those grounds, they are superior. Conservative definitions not only fail to meet the mark when it comes to such things, conservatives don't even think definitions should serve us. They seem to think of definitions as these semi-divine metaphysical forces that we shouldn't dare to question. The conservatives think we should be the slaves of our definitions. The leftists and liberals think that we should be their masters. That is the fundamental difference. Definitions exist to serve us, and we can alter them to create a more rationally desirable definition that better enhances our understandings and improves human well-being. We should reserve the term sex and the words male and female to describe the biological aspect. We need a social and trans-inclusive definition of gender because this significantly improves the well-being of people and better helps us to identify and describe nuanced social realities. The superior definition adds a new dimension to our understandings of these things, an essential social dimension. Philosophy is often about coming up with nuanced distinctions between similar things. We can push synonyms apart and add massive nuance to our understandings. Hegel did so with ethics and morality. Nietzsche did so with evil and bad. I have in the past tried to do so with punitive and retributive. Many progressive thinkers have done so with sex and gender. These nuances serve us, as definitions should. They help us to identify, understand, and describe significant social realities. To briefly reiterate my views on trans people. Trans women are women because regarding them as such is rationally desirable. Trans men are men because regarding them as such is rationally desirable. If regarding something as true is rationally desirable, it is true. Definitions should be altered when altering them is rationally desirable. I have repeated one point many times, and I have done so for good reason. I have done so because it is the core of my case, the beating heart of my argument. Concepts and definitions exist to serve us. They exist to enhance our understandings and improve our well-being. We should alter them accordingly. Forgive me if I have been a little repetitive and rambly. I wanted to make sure I got all of my points across and left nothing out. If you think any of my reasoning is flawed, feel free to point out any issues.